So there were two problems in particular that were ones that I had to use the quadratic formula on. One was the 3x squared plus 7x equals negative 2, and the other one was this one, negative 6x squared plus 3x plus 10 equals 0. And the reason I had to use the quadratic formula on them is they had all three types of terms, and the coefficient of x squared not only was not 1, but 3 doesn't go into 3, 7, and negative 2. 6 doesn't go into negative 6, 3, and 10, so I couldn't factor that out. So the first thing I would do with this first one would be to add 2 to both sides to get everything on the left side together. And I would have 3x squared plus 7x plus 2 equals 0. So now identify my a, b, and c because a is the coefficient of x squared, b is the coefficient of x, and c is the constant once you get everything on the same side of the equation and it's equal to 0. So a in this one is 3. B is 7, and C is 2. Now I'm going to take my A, B, and C and plug them into my quadratic formula down here. So x equals, big long fraction bar, the opposite of B. So the opposite of positive 7 is negative 7, plus or minus the square root of, it says to take B and square it, so 7 squared, minus 4 times A times C becomes minus 4 times 3 times 2, and then this whole thing is over 2 times a, so 2 times 3. When I get ready to simplify this next, all I'm going to do is the 2 times 3 part and what's underneath the radical. I'm not actually going to take the square root of anything yet. So x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of, well, 7 squared minus 4 times 3 times 2 is 25. And then the denominator, 2 times 3 is 6. So I have two different solutions here. One comes from the plus and one comes from the minus. So my two equations, x equals negative 7 plus the square root of 25. Again, when I put that in my calculator, hit equals before I divide by 6. And the other one, x equals negative 7 minus the square root of 25, again in my calculator equals before I divide by 6. So my two solutions, x equals negative 2, and because it said to round my answers to the nearest hundredth, I could have rounded this to x equals negative 0.33, or if you left this as x equals negative 1/3 as a fraction, I would also accept that. Everything's on the same side of the equation, so a is negative 6, b is the coefficient of x, which is positive 3, c is the constant, which is 10, so x equals, big long fraction bar, the opposite of b, so the opposite of positive 3 is negative 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 3 squared, minus 4 times a times c, so times negative 6 times positive 10, all over 2 times a, so 2 times negative 6. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of, if I take 3 squared minus 4 times negative 6 times 10, I get 249. And then over 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. So my two equations, x equals negative 3 plus the square root of 249, again hit equals in your calculator before you divide by negative 12, and x equals negative 3 minus the square root of 249, hit equals in your calculator before you divide by negative 12. So x ends up equaling about 1.56, and x equals negative 1.06 once I calculate these and round them to the nearest hundredth.